You have been manipulated before. Not once. Not twice. Multiple times. By different people, in different contexts, at different points in your life. And every single time, after you finally realized what had happened, you asked yourself the same question. Why me? Why again? This is not a question about bad luck. It is not a question about naivety. And it is absolutely not a question about intelligence. Some of the most brilliant, accomplished, self-aware people alive have been manipulated. Doctors, lawyers, psychologists themselves. The real answer to this question is both simpler and deeper than anything you have been told. And once you truly understand it, it does not just change how you see manipulators. It changes how you see yourself. Subscribe if you want content that goes this deep every single week. Hit the bell. And let us begin. Everything starts in your childhood. Not necessarily in a dramatic or traumatic way. Sometimes in ways so subtle, so ordinary, so invisible that nobody around you would have noticed anything at all. From the very first months of your life, your brain began constructing something that psychologists call an attachment style. It is essentially the answer your brain developed to a fundamental question that every human being faces from the beginning. Are other people reliable? Can I trust? Do I deserve to be loved? These answers did not form through conversations or lessons. They formed through repeated experiences with your earliest bonds. The way your caregivers responded when you cried. The way they handled their own emotions. The way they expressed love to you, or did not express it. And those early answers, recorded in your brain before you had the words to describe them, became your baseline relational model. The filter through which you interpret every relationship in your adult life. Attachment researchers have identified several styles. But two of them create specific vulnerabilities to manipulation that are important to understand. The first is called anxious attachment. If you grew up in an environment where love was unpredictable, present sometimes and absent others, warm on certain days and cold on others, your brain learned something very precise. Love is something you must constantly earn, monitor, and preserve. Losing the other person's affection is the greatest threat imaginable. People with anxious attachment have an extreme sensitivity to rejection signals. They interpret silence as anger, absence as abandonment. They tend to overinvest in relationships, to erase themselves to maintain peace, to apologize even when they have done nothing wrong. And they have a very high tolerance for painful behavior, because their brain learned very early that love and pain naturally coexist. The second style is called disorganized attachment. It often develops in environments where the attachment figure was simultaneously a source of security and a source of fear. A loving but unpredictable parent. A warm home crossed by intense conflicts. In this case, the brain faces an impossible contradiction. The person I need is also the person who frightens me. And this contradiction creates a profoundly confused relational model where intimacy is simultaneously desired and dreaded. Neither of these styles is a character defect. They are intelligent adaptations to specific environments. Your brain did exactly what it needed to do to survive and adapt. The problem is that these adaptations continue operating in adulthood, long after the environment that created them has changed. And they create precise vulnerabilities that manipulators, consciously or not, know exactly how to exploit. There is something else nobody tells you about manipulation. Something that is going to surprise you. Manipulators do not choose their targets randomly. And they do not choose the weakest people. They choose the people who have the qualities most useful to them. Empathy, generosity, a sense of responsibility, loyalty, the capacity to forgive, the need to repair and fix things. These qualities, which are among the most beautiful a human being can possess, become in the hands of a manipulator extraordinarily effective levers of control. If you are empathetic, you will feel their pain as if it were your own. And you will naturally want to relieve it, even at the expense of your own needs. If you are loyal, you will stay even when everything tells you to leave, because leaving feels like betrayal. If you have a strong sense of responsibility, you will take ownership of their problems, their emotions, their consequences. And if you need to fix things, you will spend years trying to save something that cannot be saved. This mechanism has a name in psychology. It is called the exploitation of strengths. And understanding that your qualities were used against you, not your weaknesses, is one of the most simultaneously liberating and painful realizations you can have. Liberating because you finally understand that you are not stupid. Painful because you realize that what made you vulnerable was precisely the best of who you are. Now we go deeper. To the layer that most people never reach. Because it is invisible, silent, and extraordinarily effective. These are your core beliefs about yourself. Your brain, since childhood, has recorded thousands of experiences. And from those experiences, it drew conclusions. Conclusions about who you are, about what you deserve, about what love looks like, about what a relationship is supposed to feel like. Psychologists call these early maladaptive schemas. And contrary to what you might think, they do not walk around in your conscious mind as clear thoughts. You do not wake up in the morning telling yourself, "I do not deserve to be truly loved." They operate in the background, silently, like an operating system you never consciously installed, but that runs constantly. And they direct your relational choices with devastating precision. There are three that appear most consistently in people who are vulnerable to manipulation. The first core belief is this: I must earn love. On the surface, this belief seems reasonable, almost virtuous. Of course, effort matters in a relationship. Of course, presence and investment are important. But here is the crucial distinction. There is a fundamental difference between choosing to love actively and needing to prove yourself worthy of being loved. The first comes from abundance. The second comes from fear. When you unconsciously believe you must earn love, you enter every relationship with an invisible deficit. A sense that your place in someone's life is never truly secure. That it could disappear at any moment if you do not do enough. And this invisible deficit makes you extraordinarily sensitive to any threat of affection being withdrawn. The manipulator, consciously or not, senses this dynamic and uses it. They alternate between moments where they make you feel like you have earned their presence, and moments where they make you feel like you are about to lose it. This alternation keeps you in a permanent state of vigilance and effort. You are constantly working to deserve something that should be given to you freely. The second core belief is this: if I love them enough, they will change. This belief is particularly common in people who grew up with an emotionally unavailable, unpredictable, or difficult parent. As a child, you learned that if you behaved well enough, if you were quiet enough, attentive enough, undemanding enough, maybe this time the other person would be different. Maybe this time they would be present, gentle, stable. Sometimes it worked. Not often. But sometimes. And that sometimes was enough to anchor a deep belief. My love has the power to transform the other person. In adulthood, this belief pulls you toward people who need saving. People with a difficult past, visible wounds, a potential that nobody else seems to recognize. And you tell yourself that you are different. That your love will be powerful enough to reach what is good in them. Manipulators with a painful past, real or fabricated, are particularly drawn to people who carry this belief. Because those people do not leave. They interpret every relapse as a call to love even harder. Every hurtful behavior as proof that the other person needs them. And they stay, sometimes for years, waiting for a transformation that never comes. The truth that this belief hides is this: you cannot love someone enough to change them. Change comes from within, never from outside. And your love, however immense, cannot replace the work that the other person needs to do on themselves. The third core belief is perhaps the most painful to look at directly. I am not enough as I am. This belief does not always present itself clearly. It disguises itself. It looks like modesty. It looks like humility. It looks like a desire for self-improvement. But underneath, there is something darker. A deep conviction that if people saw you as you really are, without your accomplishments, without your efforts, without your constant kindness, they would leave. This belief creates a very precise behavior pattern in relationships. You overgive. You over-explain. You over-apologize. You do more than your share, always, because doing your fair share never feels like enough. And you have a genuine difficulty receiving. Compliments make you uncomfortable. Help feels suspicious. Unconditional love, without conditions, without effort on your part, feels almost incomprehensible. The manipulator who encounters someone carrying this belief has found an extraordinary resource. Because that person will naturally compensate, excuse, justify their behaviors. They will wonder what they did wrong when the manipulator behaves badly. They will improve, adapt, bend. And they will rarely leave. because leaving would confirm their deepest belief, that they were not enough after all. These 3 beliefs, I must earn love, my love can change them, I am not enough as I am, are not your truth. They are stories your brain constructed to make sense of painful experiences. Maps drawn in a context that no longer exists. And like any map, they can be redrawn. But to redraw them, you first have to see them. Name them. Recognize them operating in your relationships. And that is exactly what you are doing right now. The first thing to understand about changing these patterns is something nobody wants to hear because it seems too simple. Change does not begin by modifying your behavior. It begins by modifying your awareness. Here is what that means concretely. As long as your core beliefs run in the background without you seeing them, they direct your choices automatically. You do not decide to choose someone who needs saving. You do not decide to overgive in a relationship. It happens, and you find yourself inside it before you have had time to think. Awareness interrupts this automatic process. When you start to see the pattern in the moment it is happening, and not 6 months afterward, you create a space between the trigger and your reaction. And in that space, there is freedom. The freedom to choose differently. In practice, here is how to develop this awareness. The next time you find yourself in an intense relational situation, whether it is a very strong attraction to someone, an urgent need to save someone, or a feeling that you must absolutely earn your place in someone's life, pause. 1 single second. And ask yourself this question. Do I recognize something familiar in what I am feeling right now? Not familiar as in pleasant. Familiar as in already experienced. Familiar as in a pattern I have known for a long time. Because early schemas do not activate in response to new situations. They activate in response to situations that resemble something familiar. And this feeling of already knowing, of déjà vu in a new relationship, is often the signal that your old pattern is coming online. The second step of change is learning what healthy love actually looks and feels like. Many people who are vulnerable to manipulation have never truly experienced a healthy relationship as a reference point. Their brain has no map for it. And when someone comes along with something healthy, calm, stable, without drama, without artificial intensity, it triggers nothing. It feels flat, boring, insufficient. This is one of the most painful paradoxes in relational psychology. The people who most need stable love are often the ones who find it least exciting. Because their brain has associated love with intensity, with unpredictability, with tension. And stability does not look like what they have learned to call love. Recognizing this paradox is already a revolution. Because it allows you to understand that what you interpret as a lack of chemistry with someone healthy might not be a lack of chemistry at all. It might simply be the absence of the pain your brain learned to confuse with love. Chemistry can develop. Trust can develop. Depth can develop. But it develops differently, more slowly, more solidly. Without the roller coaster. Without the vertigo. With something more precious and more rare. Safety. The third step is the one people talk about least, and that changes the most. It is the work you do on your relationship with yourself. You cannot sustainably attract what you do not give to yourself. If you do not validate yourself, you will seek validation from others at any cost. If you do not trust yourself, you will rely on other people's judgment to determine your reality. If you do not love yourself enough, you will accept crumbs of love because crumbs will already feel like a lot. This work on yourself does not look like selfishness. It looks like responsibility. The responsibility of becoming the safest person for yourself. The one who recognizes their emotions without minimizing them. The one who respects their own boundaries before asking others to respect them. The one who speaks to themselves with the same kindness they so freely offer to the people they love. And this work can be done partly alone. With books, with reflection, with videos like this one. But for the deepest patterns, those rooted in early attachment, those anchored since childhood, the support of a therapist dramatically changes both the speed and the depth of the change. Not because you are broken, but because certain wounds heal more effectively in the presence of another caring human being. They were formed in relationship. And they often repair in a safe relationship. I want to end with something I wish someone had told me much earlier. You are not condemned to repeat. The fact that you have been manipulated multiple times does not mean it is your destiny. It means you are carrying patterns that nobody ever helped you see. And now that you see them, you have something you did not have before. Choice. Not an easy choice. Not an immediate choice, but a real one. You deserve relationships where you do not walk on eggshells. Relationships where your love is not a currency to be exchanged. Relationships where you can exist fully, with your strengths, your flaws, your needs, without fear that any of it is too much. That is not a dream. That is what you deserve simply because you are human. If this video reached something real in you, share it with someone who needs it. There are people around you who have been repeating the same painful pattern for years without knowing why. This video might change something for them. Leave a like. Subscribe to continue this journey into human psychology. And tell me in the comments, which of the 3 core beliefs resonated most with you today? I read every single one. See you in the next one.